Okay, hello everyone. This is Lisette, and the title of my project is Storytelling to Break Stereotype Perspectives about Gender Roles. So let's get started. For the introduction, I have society, and I think this concept is important in my project because of the role that society plays in the way we think and in the way we understand and perceive the world. So, through society, there can be transmitted the ideologies and it is included in the social factors that I explained in my research. So one example that can be through the social interaction and through society is the gender roles, the stereotypical gender roles, and they are transmitted through discourses, so through language. Children hear their parents speaking and saying something about behaviors, gender perspective, and the behaviors that men and women should portray. Also, when they communicate, what they hear in the TV. So all of those discourses and the language, those social factors are transmitted through the language and they portray them through discourses as well. Which led me to the next point is that children perceive stereotype gender roles as normal. So as they are in the society and they since they are born they are given colors and roles and behaviors, they think that is normal, and they let's say that they perceive those roles and they use them, they model those roles as well. And also another factor is the Colombian society and history. I know it is not only in Colombia that we know what has been the role of women and the role of men, but as my context is in Bogota, Colombia, I will talk about the Colombian society and the history, which is important to understand. It is important to understand the Colombian society and the Colombian history to understand today's world and why today and we are still in those stereotypical gender roles. And finally, the children use stereotype discourses in classroom. So the idea is that through children literature, in this case is storytelling, I will use storytelling in classroom to transform the ideas that the children have about gender roles. Okay, so for the problem statement, as I was saying before, the role of men and women have permeated in today's world. So, what has been those roles that women and men have portrayed in past ages that that has led that women are seen as something different than men. So there is still these roles: women as weak and men as strong. In the Colombian context, the government has worked something on the gender equality, but there is not still a full change in the issue. So that's a problem that I portray in the problem statement. And also the social interactions, how, in this case, children, their relationship with the family, how they um, interact with the peers, with children, with the teachers that take place or that still portray those social bias gender roles or stereotypical gender roles. So for the research question, how does non-stereotypical gender storytelling as a strategy influence the reduction of stereotype discourses about gender roles for men and women in the third grade of a primary public school in Usme, Bogota? For the sub-questions, how does students' discourse in classroom lead to create gender stereotypical gender role perspectives? How does the discussion of a typical gender storytelling perspective about gender roles influence students' perspective and discourse in the classroom? And finally, how does storytelling allow children to understand the gender roles issues? Okay, for the research objectives, the main research objective, to use children's literature to diminish the stereotype discourses in the classroom, and the specific objectives, to comprehend the characteristics or factors that are included in the student discourse and lead to stereotyped gender roles, to explore the influence of the discussion of non-stereotypical gender roles, gender storytelling in students' perspectives, and discourse within the classroom. And finally, to analyze how storytelling allows children to understand the gender roles issues. Okay, for the theoretical framework, I have social theories and I have social learning theory from Bandura, the absorbent mind from Montessori, the sociocultural development theory for Vygotsky, thought and language for Vygotsky. So in general, these theories state that our learning is cultural and we learn from the society. We learn from our parents, from our family, and also from the language. The theories on gender, symbolic interactionism, and social cognitive theory of gender development and differentiation from Bandura tell us how gender take place in children and from which point they start acquiring those gender roles. Gender en Colombia, de quebradores y cumplidores sobre no hombres, masculinidades y relaciones de género en Colombia, from Viveros. This one tells the perspective it tells the gender roles and the gender issues from men perspective. Masculinidades y desarrollo social, from Faur. El género, la categoría útil para las ciencias sociales. They tell them what's the problem of masculinities and how it has permeated in women's choices. Children's literature, understanding children's literature from Hunt. An open book, what and how young children learn from pictures and storybooks. So the first one, understanding children's literature, this one portray from a feminist perspective how the feminism movement has helped to change this biased perspective about women in books. And an open book, it tells the perspective of women in books and how children react to it. And finally, in discourse theory, the critical discourse analysis, the critical study of language, and discourse analysis from Foucault, and it tells what's the power of discourse and how humanity or society, let's say, acknowledge the discourse. So it is basically how powerful is discourse in our way of thinking and perceiving the world. For the review of literature, I have gender roles in classroom and these authors. In basically gender roles in classroom state the perspective that gender has on children and how they perceive it and how they portray those gender roles in the classroom. Storytelling to break gender roles. In these studies, in most of them, they use children's literature, not only storytelling, but children's literature to change the perspective or to shift the perspective that students have about how gender works and what are the roles in society. So the results show that children did change how they perceive women in general and their let's say and their future career choices. The stereotype discourses, these authors basically portrayed how societies tend to use in the discourses and tend to portray in their discourses the stereotype perspective that they learn from the society. And finally, children and gender roles. These studies portray the relationship between these two. Finally, for the research methodology, I have context, Almirante Padilla School, participants, third graders, research paradigm, qualitative, research design, action research, and instruments, the interviews, focus group, worksheets, and observations. And here are the references. Thank you.